I think like how I try to always look at movies and art for me is it's a battleground of ideology, like 100%. And I get very, very interested in viewpoint. Like, what's the viewpoint of this artist, of this person? Like, kind of how you would do with an article. What's the thesis? How are you trying to get me? And I do that both in form and content. It's not just what it's talking about; it's how it's talking about it. And I'm like, okay, what's happening? Visual representation. It's all myth making. Movies are myth making. They're making representational images, and they want to produce us these things. And I was reading some Stuart Hall recently, kind of going back through him, and he says this really interesting thing about how when we mythologize others and what it says about ourselves, and how we try to create, structures of mythology of others, and how we try to then position ourselves within it. And when I looked at American fiction, I saw this like dilemma that I don't think Jefferson is the director is very honest. Where I think the book Erasure is extremely honest. And so I kind of have like 5 points that I kind of wrote out, and I'll read the 5 points and then we can go through them. So my first point is the Black bourgeoisie looks to give themselves cover. Ghettoism is the new straw man. I'll get to that in a minute. Number 2, the crisis of liberalism and individualism instead of embracing social individuals in popular Black art. Copying popular Western form has distorted our expressions of self. That's number 3. Melodrama doesn't render humans. Let me go back. Melodrama doesn't render humans in order to appeal to our heartstrings. It believes in moralism, good and evil. Melodrama and liberalism find a comfort with each other due to their shared tendencies of moralism and the highlighting of the individual versus the world. This is another one part that I've had to come to. Catharsis is not in itself positive. It is a happening. And like all happenings can be manipulated for influence and control. Number 4, and this was probably my biggest issue, the distortion of white racism as bad attitudes rather than specific agenda-driven machinations. White liberals don't mind being told they have a lack of sophistication when it comes to race. What makes them nervous is when you paint them as real predators and exploiters, and American fiction goes out of its way to not do that. Racism as a juvenile bad attitudes and not a structural control, and in a Hollywood a structural. I wrote this wrong. Racism as juvenile bad attitudes and not structural control. And in Hollywood, it is all about structural control of image. And number 5, the film diverges from the book in curious ways that expose a viewpoint of the Black bourgeois class and their lack of courage to engage in a critical self-analysis. So part 1, the Black bourgeois looking to give themselves cover. Ghettoism is the new straw man. So I think it's really important.
I need to interrupt you.
Now listen, that's called my boy. You know nothing about that.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
So I think with the first part, it's important to kind of give context to Erasure and when it was written and why it was written. Erasure was published in 2001 by Percival Everett, and it was his response. I don't think it was solely to this, but I think it was probably the overarching. It was his response to a book that we've become very famous called Push, written by a woman named Sapphire. People maybe not know Push, but they know the movie that became Push. It is called Precious. Right. So Precious, Push when it came out was a mega hit. I think it's the late 90s. If I'm either the mid to late 90s, it was a mega hit. And I mean, it's such a mega hit that Sapphire, the writer, for a number of years pushed off getting a movie made of it before Lee Daniels went in and made what we now know as Precious. So there was at that time a huge issue with the publishing of these ghetto novels and ghetto realism and the hood life. I will not acknowledge that was not a huge problem. And if you read Erasure, there's even some nods to Native Son in it. And I know other people have mentioned he's definitely. I don't know if he's going out to criticize Native Son as much as he's maybe thinking like maybe Native Son's legacy has become distorted. As you know, we've gone through decades and decades of novels of these kind of ghetto tales, right? I mean, one thing about the book, actually, I'll get to that in number 5. But but now we're in 2023, and I have to say, I find hard to think that this ghettoification thing is a huge problem in publishing and in movie media. It's not. In publishing, some of the biggest writers we have now are people who write from a very different perspective. Everyone from Marlon James to the Zadie Smiths to the what's the sister's name? Chimamanda Adichie, right? These are the people who were celebrated, and also the things that are getting optioned. Books like The Other Black Girl, The Hate You Give, these different perspectives. Now, I'm not saying I'm not putting a criticism on these books. What I'm kind of saying is that the landscape has changed, and the landscape has gone to a different kind of interest for Blackness. Now, I don't necessarily think this is a good interest that they have. I actually have my criticisms of some of those authors, like Zadie Smith and some of the other people, and some of their work. But the interest has changed. Now, in movies, which Cord Jefferson, I've seen in his interviews, he seems to be really interested in, that is not true. Like the Black bourgeois class is now allowed to regurgitate things about themselves in today's popular media. I mean, look at everything from Origin that's coming out by Ava DuVernay to, you know, everything from Everybody Hates Chris, Blackish. We have TV shows like that, Harlem. The predominant expression of Black Hollywood is one of itself, of its socially mobile, aiming to be socially mobile self, right? It is the predominant vision that exists. The Boys in the Hood day is not here in 2023, right? Now, why would Jefferson be interested in that? And I can kind of get into that in a moment. But ghettoism is this kind of straw man that exists for me, for a lot of these people not wanting to honestly self-critique the work that they're doing, which I also find a lot of that work to be very, 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 very curious and suspect, creating out social ideologies that are very, very in tune with the, you know, pro-America project, as long as, you know, DEI and representation is supported, so forth and so on, right? As long as these things are good, you know, we're fine with going with Hollywood and Hollywood stuff. Just give us our place, you know, meet our DEI mandates. Let us tell stories about ourselves, which I'll get into the later points are just kind of, to me, black-faced story renderings of white envisioning and white Americanized envisioning of self here in America. And I had to ask myself, I was like, well, why is he interested in doing this? Like, why do you create this kind of straw man? And I was like, it's a way to deflect self-critique. in the media that they're producing, because I just don't see it. I've been in this thing for a long time, and I tell you, that is not something that is asked at all. The ghetto, the get rich or die trying. It's not something that is asked at a high clip much anymore.
So I didn't read it that way. So that's my hesitation.
Mm-hmm.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.